Hey everyone, welcome back to Daily Cup English. I'm Liam, and as always, I'm here with Chloe. How are you doing today, Chloe?
Hey Liam, I'm doing pretty well. A little tired, but in a good way. You know, one of those days where your brain is already thinking about a lot of things?
Yeah, I get that. Those are usually the days when we end up talking about something real without planning too much.
Exactly. And honestly, that's kind of what this podcast is about anyway. Real conversations, real thoughts, and real life English.
Absolutely. And before we jump in, just a quick reminder for anyone who's new here. If you enjoy these daily conversations, don't forget to subscribe to Daily Cup English and follow the podcast. We upload new episodes every day.
Yeah, make it part of your daily routine. Grab your coffee, your tea, whatever you like, and spend a few minutes listening to English that people actually use.
All right, so today's topic is something that I think hits close to home for a lot of people.
Very close. We're talking about taking responsibility instead of making excuses.
Definitely uncomfortable. No one really likes to hear, hey, maybe this is on you.
Exactly. But that's also why we wanted to talk about it. Because this isn't about blaming yourself for everything, it's more about how we deal with our mistakes, our habits, and our choices.
And how excuses, even small, harmless ones, can slowly hold us back without us noticing.
So if you've ever said things like, I didn't have time, or that's just how I am, or it wasn't really my fault, this episode is for you.
All right, let's start simple. When you hear the phrase taking responsibility, what does it mean to you?
For me, it means being honest about my role in a situation, not blaming myself for everything, but also not pretending I had no control at all.
Yeah, I like that. Because a lot of people think taking responsibility means saying, this is all my fault, I am terrible.
And that's not true. That's not responsibility, that's just self-attack.
Exactly. Real responsibility is more like saying, okay, this didn't go well. What part of this was my decision? What did I do or not do?
On the other hand, making excuses is usually about protecting yourself, protecting your ego, your image, or your comfort.
Right. An excuse often sounds reasonable. That's the tricky part.
Yeah, excuses are rarely obvious lies. They're usually things like, I was really busy, or I was stressed, or other people made it difficult.
And sometimes those things are true. Life is busy. People are difficult. But the question is, are you using those reasons to understand the situation or to avoid responsibility?
That's such an important difference, because explaining a problem is not the same as making an excuse.
Exactly. An explanation helps you move forward. An excuse helps you stay where you are.
For example, saying, I missed the deadline because I didn't plan my time well feels very different from saying, I missed the deadline because I was busy.
The first one is uncomfortable but empowering. The second one sounds better, but it doesn't change anything.
And honestly, I've used both many times.
Same here. I think everyone has. That's why this topic matters. It's not about being perfect, it's about being aware.
You know, something I've been thinking about is why we make excuses so easily. I don't think people do it because they're lazy or dishonest.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of the time it's just a defense mechanism.
Exactly. Making an excuse helps us feel less uncomfortable in the moment.
It's like emotional pain relief. You mess something up, and instead of sitting with that uncomfortable feeling, you quickly say something that makes it hurt less.
And a lot of excuses protect our self-image. We want to believe we're responsible people, capable people.
So when something goes wrong, the easiest way to protect that image is to say, well, it wasn't really my fault.
Right. If you say, I failed because the situation was unfair, then you don't have to question your own habits or choices.
I remember a time at work when I missed an important deadline. I told myself, and other people, that the project wasn't clear and the timing was bad.
And was that true?
Partly, the instructions weren't perfect and the timeline was tight, but honestly, I also waited too long to start.
That's the part we usually don't say out loud.
Exactly, because once you say that part, you can't hide from it anymore.
And excuses are comfortable. They let you stay in your current behavior without changing anything.
Yeah, when you make an excuse, there's no pressure to grow, no pressure to improve.
It's almost like telling yourself, this is just how life is.
And that's dangerous, because over time you start to believe it.
I think the real problem starts when you use the same excuse again and again.
That's a big sign, honestly.
Yeah, I had this phase where I kept saying, I'm just not a morning person. That was my excuse for not exercising, not planning my day, and always feeling rushed.
That excuse sounds very familiar.
Right? And it felt true. I really did feel tired in the morning.
So what changed?
One day, I realized I'd been using that same sentence for years, and nothing was changing. My mornings weren't getting better.
So the excuse explained your situation, but it also trapped you in it.
Exactly. It gave me a reason, but not a solution.
I had a similar moment when I kept saying I was too busy to work on personal goals, learning new skills, exercising, even resting properly.
And let me guess, you were busy, but not busy every single minute.
Exactly. When I really looked at my days, I saw how much time I spent scrolling, watching random videos, or doing things that weren't that important.
That moment of honesty can be uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
And that's usually the turning point, when you realize your excuse isn't protecting you, it's limiting you.
Yeah, excuses feel safe, but they slowly take away your sense of control.
Responsibility, on the other hand, feels scary at first, but it gives you power.
Because if something is partly your responsibility, that means you can change it.
Exactly, and that realization changes the whole conversation you have with yourself.
What I've noticed is that responsibility doesn't usually show up in big dramatic moments. It shows up in really small, boring situations.
Yes, the everyday stuff that no one else sees.
Like waking up late and saying, my alarm didn't go off.
Or saying, I forgot, when the truth is you just didn't think it was that important.
Exactly. And again, these excuses aren't shocking. They sound normal. Everyone says them.
But when you look closer, many of them are really about priorities.
That's such a good word, priorities. Because instead of saying, I didn't have time, you could say, I didn't make time.
Or even more honestly, I chose something else.
That sentence hurts a little.
It does, but it's also freeing, because once you admit it was a choice, you realize you can choose differently next time.
I started noticing this with simple things like replying to messages. I'd say, sorry, I was busy. But really, I saw the message and decided to answer later.
Same, and answering later sometimes turns into answering never.
Right, and when you take responsibility for that, you stop lying to yourself.
And you also stop being surprised by your own results. If you don't exercise, don't plan, don't follow through, then the outcome makes sense.
Responsibility connects actions to results.
While excuses disconnect them, they make it feel like things just happen to you.
But I think it's really important to talk about this. Taking responsibility doesn't mean you should feel guilty all the time.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because some people hear this and immediately start blaming themselves for everything.
That's not healthy responsibility, that's toxic guilt.
Healthy responsibility is calm. It's honest, but not dramatic.
It sounds like, okay, this didn't work, what can I learn from it?
Toxic guilt sounds like, I always mess things up. I'm terrible at this.
And that kind of thinking doesn't lead to change. It usually leads to avoidance.
Exactly. When you feel ashamed, you want to hide, not improve.
I've noticed that when I take responsibility in a healthy way, I feel more focused, not more stressed.
Because you're dealing with reality, not fighting it.
And you're not stuck in the past. You're thinking about the next step.
That's the key difference. Responsibility looks forward. Guilt looks backward.
And once you understand that, taking responsibility becomes less scary.
It becomes a tool, not a punishment.
Exactly. I think relationships are one of the hardest places to take responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Because when emotions are involved, excuses feel very natural.
And also because there's another person. It's easy to say, well, they started it, or they made me feel this way.
Yeah, that "you made me feel" sentence comes up a lot.
I've said it many times.
Me too, and sometimes it feels true.
Right. Someone says something rude, ignores you, or disappoints you. Your feelings don't come from nowhere.
But responsibility in relationships isn't about pretending the other person did nothing wrong.
It's about recognizing that you're still responsible for how you respond.
Exactly. You can't control other people's words or actions, but you can control what you do next.
That's where excuses often show up. Instead of saying, I reacted badly, we say, I had no choice,
Or anyone would react that way.
which sounds reasonable, but it removes responsibility.
I remember an argument I had with a close friend. I got really defensive and said some things I regret.
What happened afterward?
At first, I told myself, well, they pushed my buttons, and maybe that was true.
But
But after a few days, I realized that didn't change the fact that I chose my words. I could have paused. I didn't.
that's a powerful realization.
It was uncomfortable, but once I accepted that, apologizing became easier.
That's another thing. Taking responsibility often improves relationships.
Yes, a real apology doesn't sound like, I'm sorry you felt hurt.
It sounds like, I'm sorry for what I said. I shouldn't have spoken that way.
And that kind of apology doesn't make you weak,
It actually builds trust.
because the other person feels heard, not blamed.
I think excuses in relationships usually lead to repeated conflicts.
Because the real issue never gets addressed.
Exactly. If you always say, that's just how I am, you stop growing.
And the relationship stops growing too.
Responsibility creates space for better communication.
And for change, even small changes.
Like saying, next time I'll try to listen instead of reacting.
That's ownership, and it changes the whole tone of a relationship.
So the big question is, how do you actually move from making excuses to taking responsibility?
Yeah, because understanding the idea is one thing, doing it in real life is another.
For me, the first change was paying attention to my language.
Same here. The words you use really show how you think.
I started noticing how often I said things like, I didn't have time.
That sentence is everywhere.
It is, and sometimes it's true, but most of the time it's incomplete.
Exactly. A more honest version is, I didn't make it a priority.
That sentence feels heavier.
But also clearer. It puts the responsibility back in your hands.
Another small shift is changing the questions you ask yourself.
Instead of asking, why did this happen to me?
You ask, what part of this was my responsibility?
That question doesn't judge you. It just asks for honesty.
And once you answer it, you usually see at least one small thing you could do differently next time.
That's the key. Small things. Responsibility doesn't mean changing your whole life overnight.
It might just mean setting one reminder, planning one task earlier, or having one uncomfortable conversation.
Another practical change is accepting discomfort.
Yes, responsibility often feels uncomfortable at first,
Because you're giving up the comfort of excuses.
but excuses only feel good in the short term.
In the long term, they create frustration and regret.
Responsibility is the opposite. It feels hard at first, but lighter over time.
I also think it helps to focus on progress, not perfection.
Definitely. You're not going to stop making excuses completely.
But when you catch yourself doing it, that's already progress.
You pause, you notice it, and you choose a better response.
And over time, that becomes a habit,
A habit of ownership.
which leads to confidence.
Because you trust yourself more when you know you'll be honest, even when it's uncomfortable.
And that's what taking responsibility really gives you. Not pressure, but control.
Control over your choices.
And over the direction you're moving in.
You know, after talking about all this, I keep coming back to one idea.
What's that?
Taking responsibility is actually a form of personal power.
I agree. It doesn't take anything away from you, it gives something back.
Yeah, when you stop making excuses, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances.
And you start seeing yourself as someone who has choices, even when things are difficult.
That doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy.
No, not at all. It just becomes clearer.
Clearer about what you can control and what you can't.
And that clarity is calming.
I think a lot of people are afraid that if they take responsibility, they'll feel overwhelmed.
But in reality, excuses are what create that heavy feeling over time.
Because deep down, you know you're not being honest with yourself.
Responsibility removes that inner conflict.
It lets you say, this is where I am right now.
And this is what I can do next.
Not perfect, just next.
I really like that. You don't need to fix your whole life.
You just need to take one honest step.
And sometimes that step is simply admitting, yeah, I made an excuse there.
That moment of awareness is powerful.
Because once you see your excuses clearly, they lose their power over you.
And responsibility becomes less scary.
It becomes normal.
A normal part of growing.
And a normal part of becoming someone you trust.
All right, I think that's a good place to wrap things up.
Yeah, this was one of those conversations that really makes you reflect.
If you're listening right now, maybe take a moment after this episode and ask yourself one simple question.
Is there an excuse you've been using lately that might be holding you back?
Not to judge yourself,
Just to notice it.
because awareness is always the first step.
And responsibility doesn't start with big promises.
It starts with small, honest moments.
So thank you for spending this time with us today.
We really appreciate you being part of Daily Cup English.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow the podcast.
We post new conversations every day, all focused on real-life English and real-life ideas.
You can listen while you're walking, commuting, or just relaxing with a cup of coffee.
And we'll be right here, ready for the next conversation.
All right, take care of yourselves.
And we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye for now.